let's look at activities. Activities are a sequence of commands that are executed when you turn the activity on. Let's create one to explain further. I create an activity that's called Watch TV. I can change the icon to TV. I can even give it a description if I want to. To start with the activity, first I need to select the entities that I would like to include in this. So I want my TV to be in here. This is an infrared device. I also have a soundbar that's also an infrared device. But I can include other entities from other integrations. Let's say I want a Philips Hue lamp. And maybe I also want my blinds in here that are controlled through Home Assistant. So the next step is to go to the Commands tab, where I see all the commands that are available from these entities I've selected. And I have two options. I can define an on sequence, which is executed when I turn the activity on, and an off sequence, which is executed when I turn the activity off. So basically what I can do is to just drag the commands that I want. So first I want my TV to turn on, then I want my soundbar to turn on, then probably I want the blinds to close, and I want the lights to turn off. And that's it. I've created a sequence that will be executed, each command after each other, when I start the activity. Of course, I can rearrange these if I want to, and then I can also define an off sequence, which will be executed when I turn the activity off. So I want the soundbar to be off, and maybe I want the TV to be off, and I don't care about the lights for this. So it's pretty easy and it's pretty cool, and you can do a lot of things with this. And when the activity is actually executed and went through all the commands, then you will see a user interface on the remote. And here we give you the option to fully customize this user interface. So you get a grid with a few options you can use. So let's take this first. I can create pages here for this user interface. I'm going to call this main. I can add another page. I call this the numpad, and I can drag these various elements or components to these pages. So I drag the numpad here, then I go back to the first page. I can add the button with an icon. So I have it here. Let's say I want to choose an icon, maybe play and pause for this one. I can add another one. Maybe I will make it a little bit bigger, and I choose another icon, maybe the lamp. And then I can also assign a comment to it. So I can find the corner lamp that I have, and let's say I want the state to be toggled when I press this icon. And I can place it anywhere on this grid, and I can create multiple pages if I want to. So it's a pretty convenient and flexible way to customize the user interface how you like. We also have the option on the left side to assign comments to the physical buttons. So as you can see here, I move my mouse, it highlights where the button is on the remote actually. And let's say I want to change the volume up key when I press it, then I can search for the volume up on the soundbar. I can do the same for the volume down. And maybe if I press the OK button, I want the TV to send the select IR command. So as you can see, I can also mix and match these things, and even I can assign the power command to toggle the light again. So I'm using an IR device, a Home Assistant integration entity, and the Philips Hue light combined in this activity, and I can mix and match the commands and assign them however I like. We have two special buttons though, the home and back button, which we use in the UI main navigation. So whenever you press the home button, you go back to the home screen, and when you press the back button, you go back to the previous screen. We still allow you to remap these buttons, but you get a warning that if you do this, then you need to use the touchscreen to go back to the home page. So if you're cool with it, then you can choose maybe to mute the soundbar when you press the home button. And if you change your mind, we have this reset icon next to it. So I can reset to the default state, which in case it was nothing. And to even make this one more flexible, we have macros. So macros are basically sequences that are commands after each other. Let's say I want to add the macro which called switch to HDMI 1. And because let's say I have an old TV that I need to go into the menu to switch to the inputs, I can grab my TV entity, drag it in here. Then all the commands are available, and let's create a sequence for a macro. The macro only has one sequence that it's executed. You cannot include macros in the user interface on the main page, but you can assign macros to icons or buttons to execute them. Okay, so if I want to navigate maybe on my TV, first I need to press the select button. Then I need to maybe press twice down, and then I go right in the menu. Oops. Then I go down again, and then press the select, and that selects the HDMI input for me that I want. I can also add delays. So let's say first when I select, I need to wait a little bit with my TV to catch up. So I add the delay there, and maybe before I go down again, I add another small delay so the TV can follow these commands. So when I execute this macro, these commands will be executed after each other, including the delays. So now if I go back to my activities, I can include this macro in my activity. So it's here, switch to HDMI 1. And this will show up as a command here. So if I search for it, then I can see that switch to HDMI 1. Then I have a run command, which means that it will execute this macro. It's pretty cool. I can also include it in the sequence. So whenever I turn everything on, then at the end it will execute the macro, which is going to navigate the TV menu and select the input for me. But what's also more cool about this is that I can actually assign these macro to any button or an icon. So we have this other type here which says text, where I can type the label that I want. So I say HDMI 1, make it a little bit wider, like this. Oops, yeah. And then I can choose the command from this macro. So I select run HDMI 1. And whenever I press this button on the screen, on the remote, it will execute this macro. And I could also create another macro. Let's say that I call it HDMI 2 and add it here. And to do that, I can quickly go back to the macros. We have this handy clone button that clones this macro, so you don't have to start over. And maybe I don't need to go twice down, just once, so I remove that. That's it. Then I have a new macro. I go back to my activity, search for that macro, HDMI 2, add it to this activity, go back to the user interface, and then I can assign it here to this command, which is the switch to HDMI 2. I want to run that, and I can also make it wider. So that's it. And if I want to, I can also assign the same command, of course, to a physical button. So whenever I press the yellow dot, then it will run this macro, which was the HDMI 2 macro. So that's it. It's a pretty flexible way how you can actually configure your activities and also the user interface, giving you a lot of flexibility when setting up the remote and making it your own.